Mr Chair.
Locke, New Blood.
Thank you very much, Mr Chair. I'll follow on from the previous speaker, Dr Prasad. I think it is very important to have that ethnic diversity in the representational structure for local bodies in Auckland, and the advisory boards, inadequate though they are in terms of a full voting representation of the different ethnic communities in Auckland, are a step forward, and I appreciate Dr Prasad is trying to make them a permanent part of the structure at least. It is important to, through the overall elected structure of the Auckland Council and the boards, to try and create systems that allow for that diversity to be expressed. And one thing I want to talk about in relation to that is the voting system, and it is disappointing that the voting system cannot be changed from first past the post to an STV system for some time out, and my colleague David Clendon has an amendment in his supplementary order paper to change that so that we could have STV by 2013. I think that is important because you can see what's developing leading up to the election in Auckland in the absence of a somewhat proportional system, that you're having a situation where it's going to be a competition between only two camps, the John Banks camp and him for mayor and various other people who support him and are running for different council positions. And then you've got the Len Brown camp, and I admit here straight off that the Green Party is in the Len Brown camp, the way it goes at the moment. But one of the problems with that is that it doesn't allow necessarily diversity, people who, don't necessarily fit in either camp, whereas an STV system allows us to get representation a bit like this Parliament, where we have not only several parties represented and able to compete against each other for the party vote, but also they're able to, the system brings in a greater range of ethnicities. And one of the problems in Auckland, particularly if an area which is dominantly one ethnicity with more of a first-past-the-post system, you won't have much of a chance. That's the way it's sort of played out in first-past-the-post Auckland so far, and it'll be even worse under this much more distant form of representation. And the distance of representation is a real problem, because at the moment we know that most Aucklanders are a bit alienated from local bodies. The voting rate at elections isn't all that great. People don't know the names of the councillors and community board members very much by and large. They're a little bit lack the understanding involvement to know how to come and address some of their problems. And actually, when you've got less representatives, the representatives will be even further away from them. As my colleague Sue Kedgley said, I think, in her earlier speech, there'd be less representatives at a council level in effect than the number of MPs we have in Auckland. So it'll be hard for people to really access that democracy, which is made worse by the mayor being further up the ladder and sort of in charge of appointing the deputy mayor and the select committee chairs, etc., etc. The more centralised mayoral system will make people feel even less powerless, more distant from the structure, and with the CCOs, particularly the transport CCO, being pretty, taking a lot of the transport issues that have engaged people often at the local level, community boards, even things like, the footpaths are getting a bit rough, or there should be speed bumps or whatever. Little things, it might seem to us, but with this structure, relatively little things, but it's a level which people have got involved in traditionally, and to have all this sort of just taken over to this Auckland Transport Agency away from their real control, I think it's going to reduce the level of participation and democracy in Auckland, and it's one of the most difficult things about this bill. I think we still need to push strongly for Māori representation, and the idea that somehow people can vote for it in the future is not good enough. It should be structurally there. The Green Party is very strongly for direct Māori representation. You can see how it plays out in some of the co-management systems that are developing in the Auckland region over the volcanoes, and people like Narumu Blair of Ngāti Whātua getting very involved in working on things like the management of the volcanoes.